The massive silhouettes of alien warships tore through the fabric of space, emerging from hyperspace like vengeful gods. Their sleek, metallic forms cast long shadows over Earth's atmosphere, a sight that would forever change human history. On the command bridge of the flagship, Eternal Victory, Admiral Daho stood motionless, his four-fingered hands clasped behind his back as he studied the blue planet below. Earth looked so peaceful, so vulnerable. Like all the other worlds the Confederation had conquered, it spun innocently on its axis, unaware of the doom that awaited it. Daho's silver eyes narrowed as he processed the preliminary scans. The planet's defenses were primitive. Nuclear weapons, ballistic missiles, and crude spacecraft that barely reached their own moon. Pathetic, he muttered, his translator converting the word into the standard Confederation language. Another species that never evolved beyond their violent origins. Behind him, his bridge crew worked in perfect synchronization, their movements practiced and efficient. They had done this hundreds of times before. The Confederation had subjugated countless worlds, and Earth would be no different. Their mission was simple: demonstrate overwhelming force, break the humans' will to resist, and add another species to the Confederation's growing empire. Begin the demonstration, Daho ordered, his voice devoid of emotion. Target their largest population centers. Show them the futility of resistance. The weapons officers acknowledged the command with silent nods. Energy began building in the ship's main cannon, a weapon capable of erasing cities from existence. The targeting systems locked onto Beijing, a sprawling metropolis of over 20 million souls. There was no warning, no ultimatum. The Confederation didn't believe in such courtesies. One moment Beijing existed, teeming with life and activity. The next, it vanished in a blinding flash of light that turned night into day. Where the city had stood, only a perfectly circular crater remained, its edges still glowing with residual energy. The humans' response was predictable. Military forces worldwide scrambled into action. Missiles launched from silos and submarines, their nuclear warheads aimed at the alien ships. Fighter jets took to the skies, their pilots knowing they faced impossible odds but refusing to stay grounded. Daho watched with mild amusement as the humans' weapons impacted harmlessly against their shields. The nuclear explosions created beautiful patterns of energy across the barrier fields, but caused no damage. Within hours, New York, London, and Moscow shared Beijing's fate, erased from existence in heartbeats. Prepare the ground forces, Daho commanded. Captain Jinwu, you may begin your landing operations. Jinwu, a decorated veteran of a dozen conquest campaigns, led his troops into Seoul. Their drop ships descended through the atmosphere like metal rain, their armor gleaming in the sun. The captain expected the usual pattern: initial resistance followed by swift surrender once the humans realized the futility of their situation. He was wrong. The battle for Seoul became a nightmare that would haunt Jinwu for the rest of his life. The humans fought with a savagery that defied logic. When their conventional weapons failed, they improvised. When their military units were destroyed, civilians took up arms. They turned the city into a maze of death, using their knowledge of the terrain to brutal advantage. Jinwu's troops found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to acknowledge defeat. Humans with fatal wounds would detonate explosives as they died, taking alien soldiers with them. Others would charge into certain death to protect their comrades or to buy time for civilians to escape. "They're insane," Jinwu reported to Admiral Daho. "We've eliminated their major cities, destroyed their most powerful weapons, and still they fight. They should be broken by now. They should be begging for mercy." But the humans didn't beg. They didn't surrender. In the ruins of Seoul, Jinwu watched as his casualties mounted. His soldiers, used to quick victories over demoralized opponents, found themselves facing an enemy that grew stronger with each defeat, more determined with each loss. For the first time in his long career, Admiral Daho felt a flicker of uncertainty. The initial reports from other landing zones told similar stories. The humans were using tactics the Confederation had never encountered, fighting in ways that defied their careful analysis of primitive species behavior patterns. As the first day of the invasion drew to a close, Daho stood on his command bridge, watching the burning cities below. Something was different about these humans. They had awoken something that even the mighty Confederation might come to regret. In the depths of space, more Confederation ships emerged from hyperspace, ready to join the conquest. But on Earth, humanity was already adapting, learning, and preparing to show these alien invaders why they should have chosen a different planet to conquer. The war for Earth had only begun, and it would change the galaxy forever. Deep beneath the ruins of Seoul National University, Dr. Hae-Newell's fingers moved swiftly across holographic displays as she examined the twisted remains of an alien shield generator. Dark circles under her eyes betrayed countless sleepless nights, but her movements remained precise and focused. Around her, a team of international scientists worked in concentrated silence, each analyzing different components of the recovered Confederation technology. The laboratory, hastily converted from an old nuclear shelter, hummed with the sound of jury-rigged equipment. Scattered across various workstations were pieces of alien technology salvaged from crashed ships and fallen soldiers. Each piece represented a potential key to humanity's survival. "Look at this," Hae-Newell called out, her voice cutting through the low murmur of activity. General Park stepped closer, his weathered face illuminated by the blue glow of the holographic display. "Their shield technology, it's not just advanced, it's elegant. They've mastered quantum field manipulation at a level we only theorized about." The general nodded, though much of the science was beyond his understanding. What he did understand was the fire in Hae-Newell's eyes. He had seen that same look in soldiers who had found their enemy's weakness. "The principles are similar to theories developed by Dr. Chen in Beijing last year," Hae-Newell continued, pulling up comparison data. "Before the attack, we thought it would take decades to make it work. Now," she smiled grimly, "necessity is pushing us to evolve faster than ever before." Across the planet, similar scenes played out in hidden facilities. The invasion had accomplished something centuries of human history have failed to do. It had united humanity against a common enemy. Ancient rivalries and political differences melted away in the face of extinction. In the remains of the Pentagon, Chinese quantum physicists worked alongside American engineers, combining their knowledge to understand alien propulsion systems. Russian aerospace experts collaborated with European weapons developers, designing hybrid fighters that could challenge Confederation air superiority. Field Marshal Song stood in his command center beneath Mount Fuji, watching real-time updates from resistance cells worldwide. The massive screens showed a planet at war, but not a planet in defeat. Every day, more alien technology was captured. Every day, more humans learned to fight back effectively. "They thought we would break," Song muttered, studying a report of successful guerrilla attacks against Confederation ground forces. "They expected us to submit like all the others." Instead, humanity had revealed its true nature. The aliens had awakened something primal, the indomitable human spirit that had allowed our species to survive ice ages, plagues, and our own destructive tendencies. That spirit now turned its full fury against the invaders. In her lab, Hae-Newell made a breakthrough. "The shield frequency," she exclaimed, causing heads to turn throughout the facility. "It's not constant. It pulses in a predictable pattern. If we can synchronize our weapons to strike between pulses." The news spread through secure channels to resistance cells worldwide. Within hours, the first modified weapons were being tested. A Confederation patrol in the ruins of London found itself under attack from seemingly primitive projectile weapons, only to watch in shock as the bullets passed through their shields and found their marks. The aliens responded by changing their shield frequencies, but humanity adapted again. A deadly game of technological cat and mouse began, with both sides evolving their tactics and technology at unprecedented rates. In Moscow's underground bunkers, Russian scientists successfully reverse-engineered Confederation communication systems. In the hidden labs of Silicon Valley, programmers created viruses capable of infiltrating alien computer networks. Each small victory built upon the others, creating a foundation for humanity's resistance. General Park watched as Newell's team assembled the first human-made shield generator. It was crude compared to the Confederation's version, but it worked. "How long until we can produce these in quantity?" he asked. "Weeks, not months," Newell replied, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten in the triumph of success. "We're learning their technology, General. More importantly, we're improving it, making it our own." The aliens had expected to find a primitive species ready for harvesting. Instead, they found humanity, adaptable, resourceful, and now unified with a single purpose. In labs and bunkers across the globe, humans worked tirelessly to turn the invaders' own technology against them. Field Marshal Song received the reports with grim satisfaction. Humanity wasn't just fighting back. They were evolving, adapting, becoming something new. The Confederation had made a fatal mistake. They had given humanity access to advanced technology, while simultaneously providing the ultimate motivation to master it. As Newell prepared to brief other research teams on their latest discoveries, she paused to look at a photo on her desk, Beijing before its destruction. "We're coming," she whispered to the absent invaders. "You came to conquer a primitive species, but you're about to meet humanity at its finest." The war was far from over, but for the first time since the invasion began, hope spread through the underground facilities and hidden bunkers of Earth. Humanity had found its path to victory, and nothing would stop them from walking it. The sunrise painted the desert sky in brilliant colors as Ji-min completed her final pre-flight checks. The experimental fighter beneath her was unlike anything humanity had ever created, a perfect fusion of stolen Confederation technology and human engineering. Its sleek lines and dark metal surface absorbed the morning light, making it seem almost alive. Inside the cockpit, displays flickered to life with a combination of alien script and human modifications. Ji-min's heart raced as the engines powered up, their distinctive hum resonating through her flight suit. This wasn't just another test flight. This was humanity's first real chance to take the fight back to the stars. "Phoenix 1, you are cleared for takeoff." The control tower's voice crackled through her helmet. Ji-min took a deep breath and engaged the engines. The hybrid fighter lifted smoothly off the hidden runway, its anti-gravity systems working in perfect harmony with traditional thrust vectoring. The sensation was unlike anything she had experienced in her years as a fighter pilot. The machine responded to her thoughts almost as quickly as to her physical inputs, its neural interface merging pilot and craft into a single entity. As she climbed higher, the fighter's true potential began to show. Miles above, Admiral Daeho was monitoring routine patrol operations when his sensors detected something unusual. A single contact, moving at impossible speeds, with an energy signature that seemed both familiar and alien at the same time. "Target moving to intercept," his tactical officer reported, confusion evident in his voice. "Energy readings suggest, sir, it appears to be using our technology, but the configuration is all wrong." Ji-min pushed the fighter harder, feeling its power as she closed in on the Confederation patrol. The aliens had grown complacent, believing they had complete control of Earth's skies. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The first patrol ship exploded before its crew could even register the attack. Ji-min's fighter moved like nothing the Confederation had ever encountered, combining their own technology with human aggression and unpredictability. The second patrol ship managed to raise its shields, but the hybrid weapons, designed specifically to exploit the weaknesses Newell had discovered, cut through their defenses like paper. Admiral Daeho watched in stunned silence as the patrol's destruction played out on his tactical display. The human craft moved in ways that defied his understanding of their technology. It was as if someone had taken Confederation engineering and reimagined it through the lens of a species that didn't believe in limitations. Reports began flooding in from across the globe. More hybrid fighters were taking to the skies, each piloted by humans who had trained relentlessly for this moment. They struck Confederation positions with devastating effectiveness, using tactics that no civilized species would consider. They're attacking in ways that guarantee casualties on both sides, Daho reported to the High Command, struggling to keep the disbelief from his voice. They're sacrificing their own people to ensure maximum damage to our forces. This defies all military logic. In her fighter, Ji-Min led another attack run against a Confederation ground base. The hybrid craft responded perfectly, its weapon systems delivering precisely calculated destruction. Around the world, other pilots were doing the same, striking from hidden bases, disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. The Confederation's carefully planned occupation began to unravel. Their superior numbers meant nothing against an enemy that refused to fight according to accepted principles of warfare. Humans would sacrifice entire squadrons to destroy key targets, then melt away before the aliens could respond effectively. These aren't just soldiers we're fighting. Daho continued his report, watching another base fall to the human attacks. Every human is a potential warrior. They don't acknowledge defeat. They don't follow any rational doctrine of warfare. They simply keep fighting, keep adapting, keep killing until they achieve their objective or die trying. Ji-Min landed her fighter in a hidden underground hangar, her mission complete. As ground crews swarmed the aircraft, preparing it for its next sortie, she could see dozens of other hybrid fighters being readied. The sleeping giant had truly awakened, and humanity was taking back its skies. The Confederation's High Command received Daho's reports with growing concern. They had conquered countless species, but none had ever managed to take their technology and turn it against them so effectively. None had shown this level of aggressive adaptation, this willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. As night fell over the battlefields of Earth, both sides knew that something fundamental had changed. The Confederation's assumption of easy victory had been shattered, replaced by the dawning realization that they had awakened something they didn't understand. Humanity's unconquerable spirit, now armed with the tools to strike back at their would-be conquerors. The war was entering a new phase, and the aliens were about to learn why humanity had survived everything its own violent history had thrown at it. The sleeping giant was awake, and its wrath would reshape the galaxy. The stolen Confederation star charts glowed softly in the darkened bridge of the HSS Vengeance. Commander Taeyong studied the complex network of supply routes that kept the alien war machine running. His small fleet of hybrid warships, just 6 vessels built from captured technology and human innovation, hung silently in the void, waiting for his command. Target acquired, his sensor officer whispered, though in space no one could hear them anyway. Confederation supply convoy, right on schedule. 8 cargo ships, 2 escorts. Taeyong allowed himself a small smile. The aliens were so predictable, so convinced of their superiority that they kept to rigid schedules and routes even after months of human resistance. Their arrogance would be their downfall. All ships, execute attack pattern Delta, he ordered. The human fleet split into 3 groups, approaching the convoy from carefully calculated vectors. Their ships were smaller than standard Confederation vessels, stripped down and modified for speed and maneuverability. What they lacked in raw power, they made up for in innovation and surprise. The first the Confederation escorts knew of the attack was when their lead cargo ship exploded. Human vessels seemed to materialize from nowhere, their modified stealth systems rendering them nearly invisible until the moment they struck. The escorts responded according to standard protocol, moving to defend the convoy in a textbook formation. But humans didn't fight according to textbooks. While the escorts moved to protect their charges, Taeyong's ships struck from multiple angles, their weapons configured to frequencies the Confederation had never considered using. Cargo ships died in flowers of fire and debris, their valuable supplies scattered across space. Enemy reinforcements incoming. The tactical officer reported. 3 minutes until they arrive. On a conventional battlefield, This would mean standing and fighting. Instead, Tai Yong gave the order they had practiced countless times: scatter and jump. Rendezvous at Point Omega. Its ships vanished into hyperspace moments before Confederation reinforcements arrived, leaving behind destruction and confusion. The aliens would find no trail to follow, no pattern to analyze. By the time they finished documenting the attack, Tai Yong's fleet would be preparing their next strike. Across Confederation space, similar scenes played out as humanity took the war to the stars. Admiral Min, commanding the largest human battle group yet assembled, orchestrated a campaign that defied conventional military wisdom. Her ships never engaged in direct battles, never tried to hold territory. They struck supply lines, isolated outposts, and communication relays before disappearing into the vastness of space. Status report. Min demanded, watching her tactical display as another carefully planned trap unfolded. A Confederation battle fleet, responding to distress calls from attacked outposts, moved exactly where she had predicted they would. All ships in position, her executive officer confirmed. The enemy fleet is following the predicted route. They still think we'll fight conventionally. Min's trap was elegant in its simplicity. The Confederation fleet, expecting to find a few raiding vessels, instead found themselves caught between two forces of human ships. But even then, the humans didn't fight as expected. Their vessels darted in and out of range, striking from unexpected angles, using modified weapons that bypassed standard defenses. The Confederation commanders tried to adapt, to impose order on the chaos of battle. But their rigid hierarchy worked against them. Every decision had to flow through proper channels. Every tactic had to be approved. By the time orders reached their ships, the humans had already changed their approach. Tai Yong's fleet regrouped in deep space, their holds filled with captured supplies and technology. Each raid taught them more about their enemy, while denying the Confederation the chance to learn their tactics. His crews worked tirelessly to modify their ships, incorporating new ideas and improvements after every engagement. "They think they know war," he told his officers during the debriefing. They'd forgotten that real warfare isn't about who has the biggest ships or the most powerful weapons. It's about who can adapt, who can think differently, who can make the enemy fight on their terms. Back in her command ship, Admiral Min watched with satisfaction as the defeated Confederation fleet retreated in disarray. Her losses had been minimal, the result of refusing to fight on the enemy's terms. The aliens still hadn't learned that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their numbers, but their ability to innovate and adapt. As reports of successful raids flooded in from across Confederation space, the alien high command faced a disturbing reality. Their empire, built on overwhelming force and rigid doctrine, was being challenged by an enemy that refused to acknowledge the conventional rules of warfare. Every attempt to trap the human raiders failed. Every defensive measure was countered by new tactics or modified technology. The stars themselves seemed to have turned against the Confederation, hiding human ships until they struck with devastating effect. Their supply lines were in chaos, their communications disrupted, their confidence shaken, and somewhere in the darkness between the stars, commanders like Tai Yong and Admiral Min planned their next strikes, teaching the galaxy that humanity would never be conquered by those who couldn't imagine breaking the rules. The massive screens in the Confederation High Command Center flashed red with emergency alerts. Reports flooded in from across their carefully controlled empire. Human forces had breached their inner defenses. Ships of mixed human and alien design were appearing in systems that hadn't seen combat in thousands of years. Commander Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Liberty's Dawn, watching as another Confederation fortress world came into view. His fleet had grown from a handful of hybrid vessels to an armada of ships from a dozen different species. Former slaves and subjugated races were flocking to the human banner, bringing with them centuries of suppressed hatred for their former masters. Multiple contacts, his alien sensor officer reported, her 4 eyes blinking in sequence. Confederation defense fleet moving to intercept. They're following standard formation patterns. Hyunwoo smiled. The Confederation never learned. Even now, as their empire crumbled around them, they clung to their rigid tactics and predictable strategies. "Signal all ships," he ordered. "Execute Freedom Protocol." His fleet split apart in ways that would have seemed chaotic to conventional military minds. Ships of different species grouped together in mixed squadrons, each utilizing their unique strengths in ways the Confederation had never imagined possible. The defenders, expecting a traditional battle line, found themselves facing an enemy that attacked from all directions at once. On Centauri Prime, Council member Subin walked through crowds of cheering aliens. Species that had served as slaves for generations now stood tall, inspired by humanity's example. The great halls that had once housed Confederation bureaucrats now served as meeting places for the growing alliance of liberated worlds. "Look at what they've accomplished in just a few years," a many-limbed alien elder told Subin, gesturing at the massive view screens showing human fleets advancing across Confederation space. "We spent millennia under their boots, never daring to imagine freedom. Then humanity showed us it was possible." Subin understood perfectly. Humanity hadn't just fought the Confederation. They had shattered the very foundations of fear that the Empire was built upon. Every victory, every liberated world, every defecting ship proved that the mighty Confederation could be defeated. Back in space, Hyunwoo's fleet tore through the Defenders' formations. Former Confederation ships, their crews now fighting for freedom, used their intimate knowledge of their old masters' tactics to devastating effect. Human innovations combined with alien technology created weapons and strategies the Empire had no defense against. Another ship requesting permission to defect, his communications officer announced. This was becoming common. As news of human victories spread, more and more Confederation forces chose to switch sides. They had seen the future, and it didn't belong to their old masters. On 1,000 worlds, billions of beings watched in awe as humanity accomplished what none had thought possible. Species that had accepted their slavery as inevitable now rose up, inspired by the examples of human courage and determination. The Confederation's carefully maintained order was collapsing, replaced by something new and dynamic. "We were blind," a defected Confederation captain told Hyunwoo during a strategy meeting. "We thought our way was the only way. We thought our technology and our numbers made us invincible. Then you humans showed us that innovation and adaptation are stronger than any weapon." Subin's gatherings on Centauri Prime grew larger each day. Representatives from newly liberated worlds arrived continuously, eager to join the alliance that humanity was building. Unlike the Confederation's forced unity, this was a coalition built on mutual respect and shared dreams of freedom. "The Confederation taught us to fear," she told one such gathering. "They taught us that resistance was futile, that their way was the only way. But they never understood what real fear was. They're learning now, learning to fear the species they thought they could simply conquer and absorb." The High Command's red alerts continued to multiply. Human fleets struck simultaneously across dozens of systems, their tactics impossible to predict or counter. Traditional defense strategies crumbled in the face of forces that refused to fight according to established rules. Hyunwoo's fleet grew with each victory. Ships that had once fought against him now fought alongside him, their crews learning human-style adaptability and innovation. The rigid hierarchy of the Confederation proved useless against forces that could think independently and adapt on the fly. "They still don't understand," he told his mixed crew of humans and aliens. "They think if they just find the right formation, the right strategy, they can stop us. They don't realize that our strength isn't in our weapons or our ships. It's in our ability to change, to adapt, to do the impossible, because we refuse to accept anything else." As news of more victories reached Centauri Prime, Subin watched the future taking shape. The galaxy was transforming, throwing off millennia of stagnation and fear. Humanity hadn't just defeated the Confederation's armies, they had defeated the very idea that resistance was futile. The tables had turned, and there would be no going back. The empire that had stood for 10,000 years was falling, brought down not by superior numbers or technology, but by the indomitable human spirit that refused to accept defeat and inspired others to do the same. Second Speaker Kita stood before the assembled crews of the Home Fleet's 3rd Division, his traditional Confederation uniform replaced with a simple black command suit. The massive hangar bay of his flagship was filled with beings of various species, all waiting to hear why their commander had chosen to commit what the Confederation would call the ultimate treason. For 10,000 years, he began, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. We have served an empire built on fear and stagnation. We believed our way was the only way, that our order was the natural order of the universe. He paused, looking at the faces before him. We were wrong. The screens behind him showed footage of human fleets in action, displaying tactics and strategies that defied conventional military doctrine. Ships moving in ways that should have been impossible, crews adapting and innovating in the middle of battle, forces that refuse to follow the established rules of warfare. Look at what they've accomplished in just a few years, Kita continued. These humans, whom we thought primitive, have shown us that there is another way, a better way. They've proven that true strength lies not in blind obedience, but in the freedom to think, to adapt, to change. Across the galaxy, his words were being echoed on 1,000 worlds. Species that had accepted their subjugation as inevitable watched in awe as humanity dismantled the mighty Confederation piece by piece. The impossible was becoming possible. Admiral Min's massive coalition fleet pushed steadily toward the Confederation capital. Her forces were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships flying alongside vessels from dozens of liberated species, each bringing their unique strengths to the alliance. Former enemies worked together, learning from each other, creating new tactics and technologies that the rigid Confederation couldn't counter. Multiple Confederation fleets converging on our position, her tactical officer reported. The massive view screen showed enemy forces moving to intercept them. But these weren't the confident, disciplined formations of the past. These were the desperate actions of an empire that knew it was dying. Let them come, Min replied, a grim smile on her face. They still haven't learned. They think if they gather enough ships, follow their ancient doctrines closely enough, they can stop what's happening. They don't understand that we've changed the very nature of warfare. The revolution spread like wildfire through the ranks of the Confederation itself. Kita's defection had broken a dam of doubt and questioning. Officers and crews who had served loyally for generations began to see the truth. Their empire was built on foundations of sand. In the shipyards of conquered worlds, slave species sabotaged Confederation vessels. In the corridors of power, ancient bureaucracies found themselves paralyzed by officials who suddenly refused to follow orders blindly. The perfect machine of imperial control was breaking down. Status report. Min demanded as her fleet engaged the enemy. Around her flagship, ships moved in patterns that would have been considered insane by traditional military standards. Human innovations combined with alien technology created a style of warfare that the Confederation couldn't comprehend, let alone counter. 3 more enemy squadrons have dropped their weapons and are requesting to join us, her communications officer announced. This was becoming common. Entire battle groups choosing to defect rather than fight for a dying empire. Keita led his ships into battle alongside human forces, teaching his crews to think independently, to adapt, to question. The very qualities that the Confederation had spent millennia suppressing were now becoming their greatest weaknesses. They thought they could control the galaxy through fear and rigid order, he told his officers during a strategy session. But humanity has shown us that the universe favors adaptation, innovation, and freedom. The Confederation's greatest mistake was thinking they could stop evolution itself. As the coalition fleet pressed closer to the capital, the revolution spread faster. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years found common cause in their desire for freedom. The Confederation's careful hierarchies and protocols meant nothing in the face of this fundamental change in the galaxy's power structure. Min watched from her command bridge as another formation of enemy ships chose to lower their shields and join her fleet rather than fight. The empire that had seemed invincible was crumbling not just from without, but from within. They never understood what they were fighting against. She mused to her mixed crew of humans and aliens. They thought they were facing just another species to conquer. Instead, they faced an idea. The idea that there could be a better way, that change was possible, that freedom was worth fighting for. The revolution among the stars continued to spread, unstoppable as gravity itself. The Confederation's rigid hierarchy, once its greatest strength, had become its fatal weakness. They couldn't adapt to a galaxy that was suddenly full of beings who could think for themselves, who could question, who could dream of something better. And at the heart of it all was humanity. The species that had shown the galaxy that impossible was just a word, that any empire could fall, that freedom was worth any price. The revolution they had sparked would reshape the stars themselves. Sunlight streamed through the crystal domes of the Great Hall, casting rainbow patterns across the assembled representatives of 100 species. The former Confederation capital, once a monument to rigid order and control, now hummed with the energy of newfound freedom and possibility. Ambassador Taiyang adjusted his formal uniform as he took his place among the delegates. Just months ago, he had been Commander Taiyang, leading warships into battle. Now he stood in this historic chamber, preparing to help build something entirely new from the ashes of the old empire. The Charter of Allied Worlds lay on the central podium, its pages containing the hopes and dreams of countless beings. Unlike the Confederation's rules of absolute control, this document spoke of cooperation, mutual respect, and the right of all species to determine their own destiny. Admiral Min watched from her position near the front of the hall, her dress uniform decorated with medals from a dozen grateful species. The victory had come at a terrible cost. Millions of lives lost, worlds scarred by warfare, families torn apart. But as she looked at the faces of the assembled delegates, she saw something that made it all worthwhile. Hope. "We gather here today," the chief mediator announced, his translated voice reaching every corner of the vast chamber, "not to establish a new empire, but to forge a true alliance of free worlds." The assembled representatives broke into applause, their various appendages creating a symphony of sound that echoed through the hall. Species that had been mortal enemies under Confederation rule now stood side by side, united by their shared experience of liberation. "Humanity showed us it was possible," Kita declared from the speaker's podium. The former second speaker of the Confederation, now representing his people in the new alliance, spoke with passion. "They taught us that strength lies not in control and fear, but in freedom and cooperation." Taiyang remembered the final battles, the moment when the Confederation's last fleet had lowered their shields and surrendered. They had expected humanity to take revenge, to establish themselves as the new masters of the galaxy. Instead, they found themselves invited to help build something new. The signing ceremony began, each representative approaching the podium to add their mark to the charter. Some used traditional pen-like instruments, others pressed appendages into biosensitive pads, while some simply spoke their names into the document's memory. Each signature represented not just a world or species, but a choice to embrace a new way of living among the stars. "Did you ever imagine this?" a voice asked. Taiyang turned to find Dr. Hainul standing beside him, her scientific uniform now adorned with diplomatic credentials. The woman who had helped unlock the secrets of Confederation technology now worked to share knowledge freely among all species. "Never," he admitted. "When they first attacked Earth, I just wanted to survive, to fight back. I never dreamed we'd end up changing the entire galaxy." Throughout the hall, former enemies engaged in conversation, sharing stories and ideas. The rigid protocols of the Confederation era had been replaced by genuine interaction and exchange. Species that had been forbidden to speak to each other now discussed trading partnerships and cultural exchanges. Admiral Min stepped forward when it was Earth's turn to sign. Her hand was steady as she added humanity's mark to the charter, though her eyes glistened with unused tears. She thought of all those who had died to make this moment possible. humans and aliens alike, united in their sacrifice for a better future. The ceremony concluded with a moment of silence for the fallen, followed by an explosion of joy that transcended species barriers. The Great Hall, which had once echoed with the cold pronouncements of Confederation law, now rang with celebrations in 100 different languages. Remember this moment, Tai Yum told a group of Yum diplomats from various species. Remember that change is possible, that no empire is truly unbreakable, that freedom is worth fighting for. As the celebrations continued, news of the signing spread across the galaxy. On thousands of worlds, beings who had lived their entire lives under Confederation control looked up at their stars and saw not distant masters, but new possibilities. The saying spread from world to world, system to system, "Beware the wrath of humanity, for they do not know defeat." But humanity had proven to be more than just warriors. They had shown the galaxy that victory didn't have to mean domination, that strength could be found in cooperation rather than control, that the future belonged to those who dared to imagine something better. As the sun set on the first day of the new alliance, Admiral Min stood at a window overlooking the capital city. The streets below were filled with beings of all species, celebrating together. The rigid order of the Confederation had been replaced by something more chaotic, more challenging, but infinitely more alive. "We did it," she whispered to herself, touching the window's cool surface. "We really did it." And in the gathering darkness, the stars seemed to shine brighter than ever before, promising not an end, but a new beginning for all species who dared to reach for them.